Hey guys, PIEGUYRULZ here, and let's talk about trust and TV shows. Now, I'm not talking about trusting news, I'm speaking strictly of fictional shows and the trust that we place in them. What do I mean? Well, whenever you watch a show, you put your trust in it. Since we are investing our time and emotions in watching, naturally we trust and hope that these stories are going to do a few things. With most shows, this can be as simple as trusting that there will be a satisfying ending. Of course, this varies though, and sometimes it's about just trusting the show is going to make you laugh. If a show promises something, you trust that they aren't lying. Like if the show makes a big deal about killing off a character, you trust that they're actually going to do it and not have some sort of lame cop-out afterwards. But especially with story-heavy shows, or shows that became story-heavy later on, you expect that every scene has a purpose and major mysteries will eventually be explained. Sometimes it really is about the ride and not just the destination, but if there are multiple scenes that serve no purpose comedically, for lore building, or for any entertainment on their own, we the audience trust that these scenes are going to be important to the story, even if we don't quite know their significance yet. So if the end of the story rolls around and it turns out, oops, these scenes really did serve no purpose whatsoever, we feel betrayed and the trust is broken, because the story really did just waste our time. Trust is a powerful thing. When an audience trusts a show, they are willing to overlook certain issues and will give the creators the benefit of the doubt. But when the trust is broken and the audience feels betrayed, they may come down a lot harder than normal on a show and have no patience for certain things. Take Adventure Time. This is a show that I've personally been on both sides of the trust line with. I've been madly in love with it and placed my utmost trust in it, and I've had that trust be shattered to the point where I have a hard time trusting the show at all. The people that trust in Adventure Time trust that the show will ultimately answer some of the long-standing mysteries and storylines in the show, at some point. They trust that when an episode is ambiguous and mysterious, that there is a greater philosophical and artistic value to an episode than just the straightforward interpretation. And if you trust the show a lot, you may believe it can do no wrong, and that every episode is good, even if you have to squint to see the quality. I trusted Adventure Time. You can go back and look at my old TV logs. I used to think nearly every episode was great and deep and interesting. But now that the trust has been broken, I've re-examined these episodes and believe some of them to be, quite frankly, awful, where before I thought they were good. That's how powerful trust can be. Where before I trusted there was always a deeper meaning, now I am always doubtful of there being one. So what happened? How did the show lose my trust? Well, a few things went down. The show stopped being fun, which was always something that was promised right in the very intro. We got more dangling plot lines and mysteries while rarely resolving the old ones, and most importantly, the show undid almost every major change it made over the years. This video isn't about my beef with Adventure Time, and if you want to see more of what I mean, I have other videos on the subject. But I wanted to use Adventure Time because I think this is a great example of the power of trust. Because they kept undoing major changes, I personally have had a hard time believing the show when it promises things are going to change again. Instead of being hooked into the story and drama, I'm always thinking, why does it matter? It's going to be undone anyway, probably. And while a story is more than just its endpoint, it's hard for me to care when I feel like I'm being quote-unquote fooled by the show yet again. And it wouldn't be so bad except for the fact that these major changes are always treated as if they are big and important, and not just treated as something that's obviously going to be reset by the end of the episode. That's just one case though. Take South Park for example. Lately they've been doing story arc heavy seasons, and personally I didn't think season 18 or 19 did a great job at bringing together their season's stories. So my trust that the show could create a satisfying ending to a story arc was broken. Then, while watching season 20, I just knew that it would end anticlimactically and with plot threads hanging. However, other people still had trust in the show, and since they didn't have the pessimism I had, were able to enjoy the season a lot more. And while I personally don't believe any of the hanging threads in season 20 will be touched on in 21, because season 19 wasn't really mentioned in season 20, other people with trust in the show don't see these as being loose ends, and have faith that these plot points will be followed up on in season 21, therefore not being plot holes and just cliffhangers. And really, until season 21 comes along, neither of us are right or wrong. We just have no way of knowing. And this is what makes judging an ongoing story kind of difficult. And if you want a non-cartoon, more universal example of when people trusted things and felt betrayed, look no further than The Sopranos, the show that, spoilers, ended with a fade to black. People were furious and felt like they had been cheated out of a true ending. This show was loved by many, so naturally a lot of trust was placed into it, which made the lack of an ending all the more crushing. And though there certainly is an argument to be made that the ending isn't a bad one, that's not relevant to this video. Contrast that with a show like Breaking Bad, which was another critical darling. That show gave a very concrete ending, and no one gave it any flack for doing so. People trusted it would end satisfyingly and with no loose ends, and it did deliver on that promise. And heck, heck, it's not always about shows with ongoing storylines either. Look at SpongeBob. The show was really consistently good in its early seasons. So good that some of its lesser episodes are still loved by most. People trusted that every time they tuned into the show, it would always put out another really funny episode. So naturally, when people go in with the expectation to laugh and are ready and willing to do so, it's a lot easier to please these audience members. And they're naturally just going to be less critical. Contrast that with seasons 4 and 5 of SpongeBob, where the episodes were very inconsistent in quality, that it broke a lot of people's trust that the show would always put out good episodes. So instead of going into every episode ready to laugh, I go into every episode thinking, is this going to be a good episode or a bad episode? How much a person trusts a show can heavily affect their views on the quality of it. If you assume all the dangling plot threads are going to be answered in the future, you're going to enjoy something more than if you assume that they are just plot holes that will never be addressed again. If you trust that important moments are actually going to have a major impact, then even if they don't, you're going to be drawn into the show in a way that those who don't trust it and are just waiting for the reveal that lol no JK, this major thing has been undone, just can't. Thinking back to when I was a kid, I liked nearly every show that I saw. I didn't have the internet to offer me a second opinion or a critical eye to really evaluate what I was seeing. I simply trusted that what I was watching would be good. I trusted in Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network that they would both consistently turn out hits. Perhaps trust is one of the reasons why kids aren't critical yet. After all, kids are more trustworthy than cynical teenagers and adults. But that's just my personal unprofessional theory. Storytelling is all about selling your audience ideas. You could have the most idiotic, insane premise, but as long as you sell the logic of the story through solid and believable plot points, reasoning, characters, acting, etc., it will be a good story. That is why trust is so important. Lose the trust and your audience stops buying the ideas you are trying to sell them. Gain their trust and they'll be easy to win over. And really, the trust that we place in TV shows is not much different than the trust that we place in people. If you'll allow me to get meta for a second, if you've been following my channel and are subscribed to me and like my past videos and what I have to say, you're obviously going to trust that what I'm saying now actually has merit, versus if you're a new person and I have yet to gain your trust, or if I've done or said something that's broken your trust in the past. You're instantly going to be critical about all the stuff I'm talking about here. And I'm not saying you can't be critical of something that you trust. You absolutely can be. And vice versa, you can be uncritical of something that you don't trust and just kind of blindly hate on it. I'm just talking about your default state when you go to view something. Like, obviously when I'm reviewing something, I try to be as critical as I can of it, but when I'm watching something just for fun, I may not be that critical if the show has earned my trust. And while the level of trust you place in a show does have at least a little bit to do with you as a person, remember that trust is earned by consistently good writing and not using cop-outs. So while some of it does come down to each individual person, it is fair to say that it's the job of the people making the show to write stories that are ultimately going to earn the trust of the audience and not break it. I hope you found this unusual topic interesting. I thought it was a little bit of a different one, and I've never really seen too many people online talking about this. So if you have any feedback or interesting stories in relation to this topic, I would love to hear it down in the comments. And with that, PIEGUYRULZ, out.